agency and the tech platform folks. I'd like to bring up Pat Pellegrini to talk about how first-party data is changing the world of the research business. Pat?
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Good morning. Thanks to ICOM for letting me attend this event and share this with you today. I'm kidding. I used to work at ComScore, so I can joke around with those guys. First, what I wanted to do is give you a little bit of background. Simmons, I hope in the US everyone knows of the company. It's been around for about 60 years, since 1954. Was recently a part of Experience, so part of Consumer Insights. Now it's its own brand again, which I'm happy to be leading that as the GM. Simmons is basically a leading cross-channel attitudinal consumer behavior research company. We measure attitudes and opinions, brand and shopping habits, web behavior, search behavior. We do this through high-quality surveys. We do it through passive technology and in the integration of the two using measurement science. And I'll talk a little bit about what that is. The reason that I'm happy to be a part of this panel is that one of the things that having a very high-quality consumer research data provides you with is ability to bring disparate data into that database and add richness and depth and consumer information about attitudes and behaviors, not unlike what we saw in that first presentation. If you have a strong, well-built, projectable database, you can bring in many different types of first-party and second and third-party data as well to your database. So if you look at in this quick diagram here, the first-party data, which may have been very detailed, extremely valuable, but highly transactional, okay? That's not a bad thing, that's a good thing. But in terms of the depth and richness of what it tells you about your consumers, we may see this red group of folks as a clear profile or a segment. What you may not see until it's linked to a much deeper consumer database, one that's projectable, say, in our case, to the US population, is that blue group of folks who have a subtle difference between maybe it's their purchasing behavior, maybe it's their brand affinity, maybe it's some other type of an attitude, and these may be high growth targets for you, and they may be regional growth targets for you, and you wouldn't see those until you combined your first party data with something like Simmons. So your first party data, you're going to have, you could have name, you could have a lot of detail, and you could have profitability, purchase frequency. So we can create tiers of certain types of customers. In the case that I'm going to show you, we're actually talking about the people that sell it and the people that buy it, okay? You combine that with Simmons data, and now you've got a projectable sample to the US population in our case and to the Hispanic population, which is the fastest growing consumer market in the United States. 60,000 variables, 8,000 brands, over 500 product categories. So you're talking about a lot of richness that you can add, a lot of dimensionality that you add to that first party data. 700 attitudes and opinions, and traditional and digital media. Some of that is collected through survey. Some of that is collected passively through content recognition. Okay, so how do we bring this all together? Well, I have a whole presentation on measurement science that I would love to give, but this is the wrong session for it. So in the public version of the presentation, there is some more detail. But measurement science is basically the juxtaposition of measurement technology. It could be passive meters. It could be bringing in any type of granular data collection with measurement methodology. Great survey-based design, great sample design, calibration, validation, weighting. Okay? If you have a measurement science philosophy driving your consumer research, you will be able to link your database to many, many other databases in a very high quality way. The 4 dimensions that we use measurement science are cross-sectional to longitudinal, so repeated snapshots of what the consumer is doing, but also a longitudinal view where time is a dependent variable in the consumer attitudes and preferences and even brand affinity. The other dimensions are being able to measure locally and nationally. And what you'll see in this presentation with Rodan and Fields as the advertiser that was working with us, they needed a very local solution, not a national solution. We also want to be able to bring together very closely custom and syndicated. So while the survey is a syndicated database, we wanted to be able to, on a custom level, bring in first-party data very easily. Okay? So the other dimension is being able to measure both actively and passively. So a measurement science approach allows those 4 dimensions of measurement science and of consumer measurement to be realized. So Rodan and Fields, in case you aren't sure who they are, if you've ever seen commercials for Proactive, they were the two women that graduated from Stanford University and developed Proactive, sold it to Gunther Renker, but they have their own skincare line, extremely successful, 0 to $1 billion in 8 years, okay? We did a lot of the work for them, so I'm very happy to be working with them as a client and do a lot of modeling for them. But they realized that eventually they're going to sort of bump up against a slower growth. The double-digit growth is going to slow down. They needed a strategy. They wanted to look at who are their best consultants, because they don't use a retail network, they use a consultant network. Who are their best consumers, and how do we find them and have a brand new growth strategy to continue at least close to that double-digit growth. So what we did was we looked at all of their first-party data. We divided it into different tiers, so we disaggregated it for them, and then we linked it to the National Consumer Survey and had to bring it down to a local level, because their consultants work out of their homes, okay? And then they sell skincare products to consumers. We were able to profile based on behaviors, attitudes, consumption habits, and look at the top DMAs. And DMAs, for those of you who are not American, is a designated market area. It's basically a media market area that marketers use in the United States. There's about 209 of them. So what did we find? Well, we found that actually the consultants, the top tier consultants, and so these are the most profitable of their consultants and the most profitable of their customers, was actually the smallest segment, which meant there was actually a lot of room for growth here. The consultants were ethnically diverse, but very traditional in their media consumption habits and in how digital they were. And they also were in different geographic areas than their customers, who tended to be white females and extremely digital in their media consumption and their media behavior, and were bi-coastal. They were in New York and in Miami. When we dug a little deeper into this, we found that by volume and by index, Miami was a great hotbed for them. Not only did it have tier 1 customers and consultants, but there was room for growth. And then we slowly did that across all of the other DMAs, so they knew what strategy to use. What happens? Well, they're using our market expansion efforts are underway. They're looking at all of their markets through the segment penetration that was provided by blending first-party data to our syndicated data. And finally, they know how to speak to each of these segments within the core markets. Thank you. Oh, sorry.